Hello everyone, welcome to another video for film studies. This video is designed for the WJC EduCAS A-level film course, and we're going to be looking at Component 1, Section C, British film since 1985, and we're going to look at the special study area of narrative and ideology, and this is a companion to the Under the Skin video, and we're going to look at Duncan Jones's Moon. Okay, so as well as meaning, response, technical elements and industry study, this module has two specialist study areas that we've got to prepare answers for, and they are ideology and narrative. It's worth noting down now or remembering that you are not required to directly compare the films. So this module is only Blade Runner Vertigo, Component 1, Section A, that requires any sort of comparison, so don't worry about that. Okay, so like the Under the Skin lesson, we're going to start with a bit of theory or just sort of something to frame our analysis, really. And this is Vandana Singh, and this is a quote from her Speculative Manifesto. And she's talking about science fiction and the importance of science fiction. And she says, while speculative fiction has not yet fully realised its transgressive potential, dominated as it has been by white male techno-fantasies, Westerns and the white man's burden in outer space, there is still a strong undercurrent of writing that questions and subverts dominant paradigms and persists in asking uncomfortable questions. No other literature, to my knowledge, has written with so much passion about technological and social issues, nuclear war, or genetic engineering. Now, the film is written by a white man, a male director, but it's the last part of the quote that is so interesting and so relevant for us, that it is unique science fiction, and it does continue to ask uncomfortable questions and look at sociological and technological issues, and that's exactly what our film does. So Moon was directed by Duncan Jones. It stars Sam Rockwell and Kevin Spacey. Domestic gross was $5 million, international 5.6, with a total of 10.67 million. And that's coming off a production budget of $5 million. The film was produced by Liberty Films, Shingu Films, Limelight, and there's some of its other financial bits of information. It made $5.6 million on Blu-ray when these slides were made. Okay, so ideology is a big part of this module, obviously, and that's what film is. Film is an ideological machine, but it's the specialist study area. So on screen now we've got off two film posters and some of the approaches or ideological or the ideologies that we've looked at and addressed in our films. So if you look at Moon, we have capitalism, environmentalism, individualism, exploitation, technological advancement. Now what we're going to try and do in this video is do a very concise and focused analysis of the ideological critique present within Moon and show how most, if not all, of these points are addressed under a general critique of capitalism. So, let's have a look. Capitalism and exploitation are central themes of Moon, and we've already covered several aspects of that on our course. So if you are on our course or you're studying the film studies course and you study Blade Runner, you'll realise that a lot of the issues and sort of critiques raised by Blade Runner in 1982 by Ridley Scott are still prevalent today, still relevant today, and are prevalent and found across most modern sci-fi films, and Moon is no exception. Okay, so I just put this is more for how to start your essay. So obviously this video just looks at one film, Moon, but in the exam and in your assessments you will be writing about both films. I said not a comparison, but it's a 40-mark question. So this is a way you can introduce both films and sort of contextualise your ideological critique. So it says both Under the Skin and Moon are examples of the science fiction genre. The genre is uniquely positioned to offer ideological critiques of society and those power structures that dominate those societies. Both films take power structures operating in our society and reflect back the worst aspects of them. Both films reflect back at the audience the evils of the societies that produce them, often highlighting you, the individual spectator, as a victim of and contributor to the systems under discussion. And in this case, those systems are, for Under the Skin, patriarchal power and gender, and for Moon it is capitalist power and exploitation of labour. So let's get into it. Okay. So if you're writing an essay or doing assessments for this course and this particular question I'm going to set, these are 4 keywords or phrases that you have to get in your essay. So you might want to take some time to define them, but you must include the terms capitalism, labour or worker, exploitation, and union or unionized workforce. And these are the 4 areas that we're going to cover in our essay, really. So let's get into it. So, where are we now? This is a direct question to the audience that the film is asking the audience to actively consider what we're going to be shown. So I think, ideologically speaking, there's our first maybe point or statement by the director. I mean, that is the director's voice asking us, the audience, where are we now? And this, in the context of the film, takes the form of an advert by Lunacorp. Okay, so ideology, global warming and its effects are shown to be a product of corporate expanse. So again, very similar to the opening of Blade Runner, we see what are basically former natural environments that are now industrial wastelands. And we see human struggle, poverty, war, destruction of natural habitats. Capitalism's effects on nature is presented to us, and it's quite stark at the opening, isn't it? We see these natural environments that are framed by, industry. And if you look at some of the images on screen, especially the bottom 3, we have symbols of nature that are being encroached upon by nature. Okay, so this advert is basically transitions into the solution, in which Lunacorp, the corporation in the film, the capitalist entity, they present themselves as the solution, but also as quite moral and altruistic, and with a capital solution. So it's a critique of the making a world a better place ideology that corporations like Apple use to distract from the exploitation of people and nature. And I'll talk about that in a second. But the binary opposition is that nature versus capitalism is introduced straight away. And also Duncan Jones's critique of capitalism and its exploitative and, I would say, psychopathic nature are highlighted via the binary opposition of industry versus nature, capitalist growth versus humanity. A second binary opposition that is introduced is of capitalism and nature, but it's resolved, it seems. So Lunacorp are using corporate power to project a solution. Capitalism and nature are now in harmony, reflected by the shots of happy smiling faces and clean beaches. So we can't just rely on that, though, because that's a little bit too simplistic. Because what we have to say is that Jones's own ideological critique of capitalism and corporations is encoded here, and he's saying capitalism is the problem. They try to hide behind progressive and well-intended programs and messages. However, their practices are still massively exploitative, and that's continued in the next sequence. And you've got notes on screen now. I'm not going to pause or labour the points. You can pause the video and watch it, and they just basically help you analyse it in a bit more detail. But come back to this idea about how companies, capitalist companies like Apple, are, massive exploiters of humanity. They are massive exploiters of nature. Yeah, but what they do through their marketing departments and through their global reach is they present themselves as the solution to the world's problems, not the cause of it. And this is usually summed up with this cliched phrase of making the world a better place. If you look at some of the headlines, Tim Cook, head of Apple, on how Apple makes the world a better place. Steve Jobs makes the world a better place from beyond the grave. And this is so pervasive now in Silicon Valley and within these tech companies that it's even become a point of parody in the TV show Silicon Valley. So it's Mike Judge's Silicon Valley. I can't recommend it enough. It's spectacular. And not only is it very, very funny, but it's also a scathing critique of the issues that we're addressing in this essay, so I'd fully recommend that. So like in the start of the film, what we get is a time, we get the reality of the situation, and then the corporate, sort of cover up of that. And they sort of also, we're sort of almost like reflect the problem back on the audience, or like the consumer, as if we are actually the worst contributors of it. Okay, anyway, this utopian image of the company is juxtaposed with images of its workers, however. Okay, so when we get to the moon, as we exit the advert that talks about making the world a better place, Lunacorp, we see Sam, and he's introduced through frames within frames, so he's constantly shot to be either obscured by something, in particular Gertie, if you look at the second screenshot, or we're looking at him through windows or tight spaces. And the idea is that we get another ideological critique through, an ideological critique expressed through a binary opposition. So here's some points to put in your essay. So ideologically, Sam is a worker just like you and I. Sam may appear happy, but he is trapped in a faraway place and forced to work. His labour will benefit the corporations by increasing profits, and also benefit us, the consumer, because his hard work means cheaper energy to us. Seems good. But Gertie is then shown as a controlling force who reports on Sam's every move. So technology itself is amoral, it's just a machine. And this shows the capacity of corporations to control and manage us through the use of machines. It also introduces the idea that was introduced in Blade Runner. Those who are in control of technology control society, and by extension everyone living within it. So by using a machine to control and interact with Sam, it also shows how workers are dehumanised by corporations. You know, he's not worth the time, so they send the machine to do it. And then how is that expressed through a binary opposition? Well, we have capitalism versus the worker. This is not necessarily inherently bad, okay? He works and they pay him. We all benefit. But that's how it seems. But through Gertie, we quickly realise that Sam is working very hard and that he's not given access to the benefits of his labour. Only others can profit from it. So Sam does not receive any of the profits or any benefit from his labour. It's only the corporation that do, and the consumer. So binary opposition in Sam and Gertie. At first, Gertie is in a position of authority. He is a machine overruling a human. Gertie is an extension of corporate power and is a mirror to Sam. They are both things, resources to be used, and the company is clearly the company clearly value the machine more than the human. Okay. So Jones's ideological critique of capitalism and corporations is encoded here. We're all victims and perpetrators of the system. Companies can use technology. Companies tell us technology is a benefit to us all, and it mostly is, but it is also used to control our behaviours and identities. So that ideology is expressed through the binary opposition of Sam and Gertie. Okay, so the next key point I'm going to talk about in this video is unionization. Okay, so at the time of recording this, of April 2021, we are living through, or what's going on in the background now is a lot, in America in particular, a lot of conflict between corporations, in particular Amazon and their workers. And now Amazon are trying to basically eliminate the ability and the legal right for people to unionize as a workforce. So a trade union then is an organisation of workers who have come together to achieve many common goals, such as protecting workers' rights, improving safety standards, and preventing exploitation of the workforce. So lots of benefits, obviously, for workers in that sense, because it gives people a voice, and if you alone or one person alone is trying to be a voice, it's easy to silence them. But if your entire workforce or a large number of your workforce have got that same voice, then the companies may have to take notice of that. So the benefit of unions are about protecting the worker, giving them a voice, and ideally preventing exploitation of the worker. And there's some quotes about the importance of unions there. The reason this is relevant for us, though, is that all the way through the film, we see Sam, number one, the first Sam we meet, as being exploited continually. He's alone. He tries to raise his concerns with the corporation, but he's sort of, patted on the head, told everything will be okay, and then he's ignored. So he can't do anything. He's got no power. But then later in the film, this exploitation of worker and the importance of union is reflected ideologically and in the narrative. So Sam finds the clones. Sam realizes that he's a clone and then finds the basement. At first, Sam will not believe that a corporation would do this. So the original Sam is still not willing to, accept the truth that he is a victim of exploitation. And he says Sam too must be lying. So Sam at this stage is so much a part of the system that he will not criticise it. His very perception of reality and what is happening to him has been controlled and formed by these corporations, Lunacorp in particular. He even thinks it's wrong to criticise this powerful company. And at this stage, he begins to realise that he's being exploited and he's being used for his labour. And with the help of Sam too, he starts to see how the company sees him, a resource to be exploited to the maximum, then discarded and replaced. So it's only when Sam 2 and Sam 1 unite and they stand together that they actually stand a chance of making change happen. So ideologically, what's being presented to the audience is the importance of unionisation and unionised workforces. Okay, so again, how that's expressed narratively. Binary opposition. We have corporations versus humanity. Capitalism is anti-human in many ways, and it relies on exploitation and power to subjugate and control groups of people. Sam is in direct opposition to the company, but he will not admit it. A second binary opposition emerges of Sam 1 and Sam 2. That's introduced, and it's used to convey the ideas listed under the Ideology tab, which is on the left-hand side of the screen. However, that binary opposition is resolved. Okay, so Sam 1 and Sam 2, their opposition is removed because they resolve their relationship and they unite to present a united front. They combine their efforts and use their labour to benefit themselves, not the company. So, let's come back to the point in blue. Corporations thrive on exploiting individuals, but when a workforce unites and become unionised, they take back some power from the capitalists and are able to alleviate some of their own exploitation. When in groups, we are stronger, and this is why most companies promote individualism as a goal to strive towards, not collectivism. And if you want to see more about that, read about the Amazon union debacle or that conflict, and try to understand why would Amazon not want the workers in a union, because on an individual level they're easy to control, but as we see in Moon, if the people stand together and unite, it will actually affect change. Okay, and then we come towards the end of the narrative, and Sam liberates himself from a capital machine before it kills him once and for all. So ideologically, Sam 1 remains on the base of free man. Although trapped, he has escaped the bondage of labour and determined his own destiny. And I think this is a really important message in the film. So the ideology expressed is that capitalism is anti-human. Those who escape or resist the system are destroyed by it. The cold, callous and psychopathic nature of capitalism and corporate greed is laid bare as they return to execute the worker who refuses to obey. So, they're not going to listen to his concerns. They're not going to listen to what he says as a human being. They're not going to acknowledge his humanity. He is basically a machine that has stopped responding correctly, so they're going to replace it. And narratively, the binary opposition, the company are back. Okay, they are livid and they send a death squad to first fix the antenna, secondly kill Sam. The opposition of capitalism, capital companies, corporations and their labour and their employees, that opposition is brought to the front of the audience's mind at the end of the film. So Sam is said to be looked at as a symbol or representation of sweatshop workers. His company has unlimited wealth, yet it still moves to undeveloped nations with lax laws, picks the most vulnerable people, the most desperate people, and exploits their labour for barely any pay. It's modern day slavery. Apple, etc. have suicide nets in their factories. The domination of the workers is so complete that they even control if they live or die. Sam represents a critique of this, as the clones represent this. It's cheaper to keep the same person alive than hire and train new employees. So this is one of the starkest and saddest reflections in the whole film, is that it is literally just comes down to profit margins. The person's humanity and dignity is not even part of the equation. It's all about profit margins, and we see how companies will exploit workers and how they view the workers. Okay. So at the end of the film, Sam 1 remains on the basis, Sam 2 returns to Earth. Okay, so to finish your answer, Sam 1, he benefits from unionised labour. So the resolution of that binary opposition of this, disparate workers coming together to form a unionised or united front, he benefits from that. So that resolution of that binary opposition is a positive, and it presents the ideological statements that we must have a unionised workforce to protect ourselves. So his life will be cut short by the barbaric practices of capitalists. Sam 1, that is undeniable. However, he has freed himself because he has made that choice. So he is controlling how he dies, not the company. So narratively, there still remains those who actively support these companies. Okay, so as we get Sam 2 returning to Earth, we hear voices on the radio, and they have quite a broad set of responses. Some people are curious, some people are flat out against him, some people call him a liar, some people support him. And basically, the voices that do not believe Sam, they reflect our own inability to critique these companies in a meaningful way. And what I mean by that is and I'm talking to you, me, the audience, we say things like, oh yeah, exploitation's terrible, child labour, sweatshops, they're really bad. But at the same time, we still buy iPhones and Samsung and Nike and Adidas and Primark and still use these systems. So we're not really doing anything in a meaningful way. So our complacency in this system and our own hypocrisy is laid bare at the end of the film. Okay, we know where all this cheap stuff comes from, and if you buy it, you are exploiting that person indirectly. So in the end, Jones shows us the exploitative psychopathic nature of capitalism. He shows us how we are a part of the system and how many people are willing to participate in it. We say we care, but we don't. Or more accurately, we are unable to resist it. So the final message of the film, only through a united workforce and an acceptance that all the benefits capitalism presents to us are built on human exploitation, can we improve the world. So that is the short rundown of ideology and narrative in Moon. Here is the question that we've been building up towards. How useful has an ideological critical approach been in understanding the binary opposition of your chosen films? So it's 40 marks because it would ask you to refer to Under the Skin and Moon, but if you're in my class or you're writing this essay, it's a 20 mark question focused just on Moon, and this is, as I said, the companion to the previously written Under the Skin essay. And look, I'll sum this up in one very simple sort of metaphor, if you like. The best way to understand Moon is this, is that think of like Primark. We have Primark, this company, this big massive shopping centre, or, you know, big massive shop, and it's in the centre of our respective town, isn't it? And it's full of all these amazing benefits, really cheap clothes, yes, they're disposable, etc., but they are cheap, and it's great, we benefit from it. So think about like the Earth. Okay, so the Earth in Moon, where Lunar Corp, are based, that is Primark, the shop. It's great, it's full of benefits, it's cheap, it's great. However, behind that is the exploitation of the worker. So those workers who are making those clothes that we benefit from are, you know, young people, exploited people in sweatshops, predominantly in Asia. So what you have to think about is that's Sam. Okay, Sam is those kids and those poor people in the sweatshop, and that's what's happening in capitalism. We benefit from all of the exploited labour, but they are kept so far away and removed from our sort of consciousness and our system and way of life that we don't really question it, or, you know, we don't really question it in a meaningful way. So that's the best way I can describe this in one sentence or two. But that's it. If you need anything else, feel free to email me on the email below. But yeah, thanks for